Well, let's see. There were 2 preseason games, which that was really a more training situation. So those were other venues I got to go to, and one of the venues I got to go to in preseason was Green Bay.
Yep.
And that's something I really looked forward to because I asked one of the supervisors early in the process, hey, if I get to go to one place or 2 places, what would be the best, the most interesting place to go to? And without hesitation, the supervisor said, oh, Lambeau Field by all means. So the 4th week of preseason, I got to go to Lambeau Field. So that was a pretty neat experience. Then opening day in Chicago, going to Soldiers Field, that was a pretty neat experience. And then I guess one thing when I look back and remember the most about it is my wife and son got to go to Chicago for the opening game, and then the 2nd week my daughter and son got to go. So we had kind of a special family visit both times. So it was a lot of fun going to those games, and it was a lot of fun to be able to share the experience with my family.
All right, Mike, Bub here. Starting the preseason and going into the season, do you think the majority of the replacement refs were maybe a little nervous or anxious or maybe just excited to get the opportunity? And maybe what about you personally?
Well, you're asking a question with an A, B, C answer. Now, as a college teacher, I would probably look at that a little bit as all of the above. I think everybody was excited because they wanted to be officiating at the highest level. I think there was a little nervousness to see if they were capable of officiating at that level. And obviously excitement because, here you go into a venue with 70,000 people. So I guess that would be an all of the above situation. It was exciting. It was a challenge. It was just, everything you could imagine it to be.
Right, yep.
Great. Now, Mike, what would you say is maybe the main difference between the college or high school game versus the NFL?
Well, there are several differences in rules. A lot of the rule differences are very subtle. Everyone's familiar with, you got to have 2 feet in the NFL, and you have to have 1 foot in NCAA. Everybody's familiar with that. But there are a few other situations where you have, the difference of a 5-yard penalty or a 10-yard penalty or some things like that. So there's that situation. There's a lot of administrative situations because the game has a lot of, it's dictated a lot by TV, and you got to get your commercials in, and you have a lot of administrative situations you got to think about.
Right.
And then you also have the situation of the speed of the players and the athletic ability of the players, and that is really immense.
Right. Now, Mike, as I mentioned before, you did have the opportunity to ref games which included, I think, the Colts, Bears, Rams, Redskins, Packers, and Seahawks. Was there a particular player or coach who maybe really stood out to you as being overly, understanding or pleasant or nice to you during or before the games?
I could say nothing bad about any of the coaches. They were all very professional. I got to speak to Lovie Smith. Lovie's a nice guy. He's got his hometown is not too far from my hometown here in East Texas. So, we have a couple of friends in common, and we got to talk about that. We had several opportunities to meet Coach McCarthy with Green Bay, and class guy all the way around. Coach Shanahan, nice guy. Coach Fisher. Those are guys that you've seen on the field a lot of times, and they're all class guys. So, I was excited to talk to these guys. I mean, these guys were all very professional. They had a job to do. They realized that we had a job to do, and that's what it was, a very professional situation.
Well, Coach, I don't know if you'll have an answer for this one, but on the flip side of that, maybe was there a particular player who gave you a particular hard time and really was on you, the whole game?
No, not at all. Not at all. There was maybe a pass interference call that one of the players, maybe from Chicago, wasn't too happy about. But, as an official, you've seen that from day one.
Yep.
Almost. You're never going to make everybody happy. If you're calling a high school game, a college game, or a pro game, you're going to make half the people mad and half the people glad a lot of times. And so, just a little criticism like that just kind of rolls right down your back and off, and next play happens and you don't even remember it.
Yeah, Mike, and that kind of actually leads me into my next question for you. You kind of already touched upon it, but I actually personally umpire Little League for a couple of years, and I know how mean and nasty, some coaches and parents can be sometimes. You got to have, you got to have some thick skin. So I could just imagine, what it's like to, when a 300+ pound, athlete is, calling you names that you never heard before. How do you kind of keep your composure, during the times? I know you have a lot of experience as a ref, but how do you?
Kind of an interesting story in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
I called a pass interference, I believe, against Chicago, and one of us was pretty boisterous about it. He didn't really like to call it, so I backed up over to the Indianapolis sideline, and the coach from Indy said, let that guy say that to you. And I said, Coach, I'll be quite honest with you. When the guy's yelling and screaming at me, I just kind of turn it off. I don't really pay it any attention. I said, now, if you want to sit here and talk to me in a professional manner, we'll have a nice conversation. And he was just amazed that I was able to do that. And he said, well, how can you do that? And I said, well, Coach, I tell you really honestly, I've been married for 35 years. and he, just like you, he started laughing, and he turned around and walked away. So with a little humor, the entire situation was diffused. And, I like to do things like that.
That's awesome. Now, you were a professor at a Trinity Community College in Athens, Texas. Is that correct?
That's right. Trinity Valley Community College, and I teach economics.
And so were you able to just go back, after the regular refs came back and just kind of integrate into your life, no problem?
Oh yeah. I mean, this was just going to be a little sidelight. We didn't know how long it was going to last. Didn't know if it was going to last a period of days, weeks, or months. So it was just a temporary situation all along for me. It was really nothing to hang your hat on. It was just you just knew it wasn't going to last long. As I've told some people, we were hired to be fired. When we first got started as replacement guys, we had our fingers crossed we would get on the field for a preseason game. That worked out, and then we said, well, gosh, I hope we get to call a regular season game. That worked out. Then we ended up getting 3 games. So, I guess my expectations were more than that.
Excellent, great. Well, again, it's Mike Peak, a replacement ref, and now he's certainly doing some more reffing there at high school and college levels, and doing his diligence there as a professor at Trinity Community College. Mike has some great insight on your experience as a replacement ref, and we really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us here on the show, and I hope you have a good, I don't know if are you thinking about reffing again, applying for the NFL, or you just kind of settle in at this point?
No, not really. My birthday was during the lockout, 62. I don't think that the NFL is looking for any 62-year-old guys to be full-time officials. I know I'm in pretty good shape, and I do a lot of running and all that sort of thing. But they look at it from the standpoint of it's going to take 2 or 3 years to make an official a good official. So I would be 64 or 65 by then, and that's getting on up there as far as the NFL is concerned. I'm sure they're looking for guys in the upper 30s, low 40 range where they can train them, get them up to speed with the NFL, and then have them available to work for 15 or 20 years, and not somebody else, doesn't have that many years left as far as on the field official.
Gotcha. Well, again, Mike, thank you so much. We appreciate the insight, and this was really some good stuff. Thank you.
Okay, thank you much.
That was this week's Dynasty Podcast Interactive segment.
Well, fascinating. There it is. I thought we were pretty gentle with Mike. We didn't. He's our guest, and we didn't want to.
I figured he didn't really, we didn't really want to talk about. I'm sure he's probably answered it 1,000 times.
Right.
So I didn't want to bring up anything too, but I thought that was pretty interesting.
Good stuff, interesting stuff.
The whole process about how they pick the refs and how they have to go through. They went to Atlanta, then Dallas, or whatever it was. I thought that was I really had no idea how they. I thought they just went to a high school in Texas and said, hey, Joe, we need a ref. Come here.
Hey, you.
Hey, Mike Peak, come here. We need a ref. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Good stuff.
And that whole, I thought it was good.
Good stuff.